There it is.
So there's this book, Abundance. You hear about this? This book that came out?
No, I haven't really heard of it. I've just caught a whiff since I've been back.
It's all the rage. People are talking about it on the internet, on Twitter and Blue Sky. And it's kind of, like a futurist type of thing. Essentially, as I'll explain later, it's kind of like just this sounds like such a boring take to have, but it's really just a rehash of neoliberalism, but we'll get into that. But it opens with like a vision of the future of the year 2050. So like the opening of the book is like, this is what life is going to be like in 2050. And this is what it says. You wake up at 3:52 a.m., go to the bathroom mirror, and remove the tape from your mouth that you were sleeping with. At 4:02 a.m., you dunk your face in a bowl of Saratoga Springs ice water. At 4:23 a.m., you write an entry in the loudest notebook of all time. At 4:47, you run on the treadmill. At 4:49 a.m., you rub banana on your face. And it's on and on and on. So you really okay? So I thought that was going to land. You have no idea either of the internet things I'm referencing that have just been
No.
percolating this weekend.
Dude, I've been out of the country and like off the internet, like not really able to use the internet for like
I'm
4
jealous.
days. And I just got in and was like looking at shit like, at the airport, and I kind of saw like the thing you're talking about.
You saw the abundance book with the Earth sliced in half?
No, I saw the guy's morning routine.
Oh yeah, that's what I was. Yeah,
his mouth. But I have no idea what the fuck the context is at all. Okay, I see now what you're doing here. You're doing a mashup.
yeah.
I was like, no way. Is that literally from a book?
I shouldn't have told you I was gonna do a bit at the start of the show. It kind of ruined the surprise element by telling you there would be a surprise.
I'm sorry, Anders. I thought it was real.
Yeah, no, I mean nobody really knows who this guy. I mean, apparently he was a running back for college football and is an influencer now, like a fitness influencer. But fitness is like such a small part of any of this. He has all these like morning routine videos, and
tape on my mouth.
Yeah, which actually I don't know. It's not a good idea, but I'm a mouth breather, and my girlfriend is always hitting me in bed and like, well, that's a weird sentence. My girlfriend is always annoyed in bed that I'm breathing through my mouth, and she wants me to breathe through my nose. So that is like a solution. Some people, it's kind of an Ezra Klein abundance type solution to the problem of mouth breathing, when the real solution is structural.
As a sleep apnea man, I'm telling you, this is a thing. When I figured out I had sleep apnea, and I was like trying to get the proper medical equipment to keep myself from dying of a pulmonary problem, when they don't want to give you the sleep apnea machine, the thing they often tell you is like, have you tried putting tape over your mouth?
So it's a real okay. Wow. So doctors will say that.
But they're saying it out of bullshit. Like it doesn't work. It doesn't cause you to breathe differently. I mean, I guess it like could, but also like, fuck no. Like I don't want to do that.
Yeah, no, that sounds like torture. Especially because the reason I breathe through my mouth is because my nose doesn't work. It's clogged all the time. Like I only have one nostril that I can use at any given time.
I also you look like you're being held hostage in a movie. And that's weird.
Yeah.
You know, in movies where they put a piece of tape over a person's mouth and the person is like, I can't talk. You could just move your face and it would come off. It's weird that in movies, the premise of like, oh, we got that hostage, couldn't possibly yell the password along to Keanu or whatever.
You just got to push it out with your tongue, but you need a large, dexterous tongue for that, and that's one of my few gifts. This Ashton guy, the best part. I mean, did you see the part of the video where he's on a Zoom call for like 5 minutes? I think is what it clocks out to. But he says Yeah, we're gonna need to get that up to 10,000. It's not clear what he's talking about. $10,000 is in like a really big business, not a lot of money. I would think, and 10,000 views. I don't know if that's what he's going for because he's an influencer. But then he also has bodyguards who are like also who are bodyguards and butlers. And when he's working out, they'll like hand him these bowls of iced Saratoga Springs water to splash his face in. Um, and then just the most random stuff. He's playing basketball in one video, and I really don't know what he's going for here. Maybe there's like an ulterior subliminal code, right? Like, people are already saying like this guy is gonna turn into like a right wing influencer pretty soon. But he's playing basketball, and he has his bodyguard butler just hand him a watermelon, just during his hoop shooting session.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, he's a new main character, and he apparently, I think he's renting this apartment or something like that. And he got enough money to like do these videos. I saw a thread about how he is actually broke as hell, and has and scammed somebody who was helping him launch this brand that he has. When they were like going back and forth about T-shirts, and he like didn't want to pay this guy. But he is nevertheless an artistic genius.
Okay, good for him. Still don't fully understand what has been happening here since I've been gone, and the saddest thing is that someday I will. I have a feeling. It's a really nice cleanse to get out of the country. You know, on White Lotus, when the kid can't use his phone, and then he like has a return to like the natural world.
Is
The
that this
first season.
season?
What's the first season?
Oh, and then he gets into was it kayaking? Yeah,
Rowing. Yeah,
rowing.
with natives. That shit's real, man. Uh, I guess. Okay. All right. I guess I'll get into it. By the way, hello everyone. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the pod.
Anders Lee here.
America. It's Anders Lee. Anders J. Lee is here. Anders Ha Lee is here.
Is that how they
Uh,
say it?
I
South of the
don't know.
border?
I don't know. The thing is, like, man, I have bad Spanish because my family, I've talked about this a lot, like assimilationists. So I have the same amount of Spanish as all my gringo friends that I went to Mexico City with. And it's really interesting to go down there because you're a big group and you all just like whatever you do have. Like I was able to speak, pidgin Spanish and get around with people. But you do catch yourself just making up words and shit because they have to fit into a sentence you're making and stuff.
Hmm.
And I literally like because it's a b c ch d h. I I don't know if it's ha. I just said that, but I said it with confidence as if I was trying to get you to sell me a beer right now. And then you're like,
That's what you
"Oh
say when you want a beer? Huh?
no!" I mean, I just make up words. Like
Oh,
depending
okay.
on whatever I'm trying to say. If it was the type of beer was a J, I'd say un ha por favor. And then you would hand me the largest J brand beer I've ever seen in my life
I know it.
for
I,
fair cheap.
I know in Peru they whistle if you want a drink, and I have a friend who's Peruvian who got thrown out of a bar for whistling for a drink, which is understandable. That would be really annoying if
I,
you're not in the right context. Yeah,
oh, they did it back here. Oh
yeah, he
yeah,
did it in like Harlem.
I'd fucking kill you if you whistled. Um, speaking of a drink, hold on, I'm gonna pause real quick. So, let me tell you about this trip to Mexico, why I went, how it's gonna relate to the show here, and everything. So, um, I've never been to Mexico City, and I really have been wanting to go for a long time. And our pal Jamie Peck had a birthday, and decided to throw this like Mexico City fucking Airbnb party trip thing, right? And invited a bunch of group of friends, a bunch of comrades, a bunch of our world. And so I was like, you know what? Okay, I'll go. I don't know if I even have the money and should be doing this right now, but it seems serendipitous, right? So I was like, okay, I'll go down here, and it's March, man. I still haven't done this. I'm getting on this soon. It's coming soon. is I'm going to put together a long episode about, or maybe a couple episodes, maybe a series at this point. I don't even know. Uh, about the Mexican Revolution and about Magonistas and anarchism and IWW and all this stuff. All of this shit. If you're a new listener to the show, you don't know. I have an ancestor I discovered years ago, um, who was a Magonista. The Magonistas were like anarchists that worked with the IWW, Eugene Debs, people like that. Stuff central to the story of our, what we talk about on the show, the story of the left in America and in this continent and in the world. Um, and like I've been trying to do research about this guy, and it's turning into a big, big, big thing for me, and it's very personal. So it's like I want to get it right. So it's a project that's going to come out when it comes out, and I'm very excited about it. And I'm reading a book about the Magonistas right now, and in the book, this author talks about how there is a descendant of Magon himself. So my ancestor is this guy Juan Jose Arredondo, who was a Magonista. He was like one of the Ricardo Flores Magon's vanguard, like of people. And it's a small circle. Like it's pretty crazy. It's like being related to the fucking Central Committee or something in Soviet Russia, or someone from it rather, right? But there's a direct descendant of Ricardo Flores Magon who's around, and he talks about stuff, and he's here in LA sometimes, but he also in the book it says that he runs like a museum out of this thing called La Casa del Hijo de Ahuizote in Mexico City. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to find this place. I'm going to go and then we'll see what happens. Maybe they'll talk to me there. Maybe something will happen, right? Um, so I emailed the author and I didn't hear anything back. I can't figure out what she's up to. She's like, this book came out a couple years ago. It's pretty recent, but she's like, seems like she's really involved in her next thing right now. She's really involved in police abolition. She's here in Los Angeles, but I couldn't really find her. And so I started trying to find the Magon descendant, and I couldn't get a hold of him either. And I started like trying to contact the museum itself, and it wasn't not much was turning up. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to Mexico City with my friend. I'm just gonna go show up and see what happens, right? So I go to Mexico City, and I've not traveled this level internationally as an adult, really, like this long. This is a really interesting experience for me. Mexico City's fucking incredible, man. It's so cool. Um, it's like this big ass city. We stayed in like, this really nice Williamsburgy kind of part.
Hmm.
And um I don't know, man. There's like so much going on. So we got there and we got this long schedule of stuff to do over the few days we're there. And I'm like, I can't, not everything got fit in. I have to go back at this point. And like, people fucking DM'd me from like the audience, like on, Instagram and shit like that. We're like, yo, did you go to Trotsky's house? I fucking couldn't fit it in. We couldn't make it to Trotsky's
Ah,
house. I'm gonna have to go next time because the thing is, Trotsky's house is across the street from the Frida Kahlo Museum, which is at Frida Kahlo's house. Of course, I wanted to see that shit. I want to see both of them, but like it was booked up. Like to get a fucking tour, you have
mm.
to get a tour in advance, and it straight up was booked up. And we did like 100 other things. So, but I'm gonna go back. Like it was so fucking cool. That I just catch that next time. I'll talk about that for the show next time. But like a few other things that happened were able to fit in. Like we saw Teotihuacan and the what do you call it? The pyramids there, the pyramid of the sun and the pyramid of the moon. A lot of like the ancient ruins, and it was cool. I've seen some of that shit before. I've seen like the Chichen Itza, what do you call it, El Tulum ruins when I was younger, when I was like 18. I had a really good experience when I was like 18, where when I went to go see the ruins at Tulum, this this tour guide I remember like had this big audience full of like white people and tourists and stuff, and there was this mood in the audience where like I feel like everyone really felt like this indigenous person was about to like get really serious, and there's just sort of this like this gaze of like the noble savage kind of over the whole thing, and everyone thought that we're gonna go and this person is gonna like enrich us with like the spirits of this thing that we're disconnected from, right? And then this person just starts talking. This is one of my favorite things that's ever happened. It's a very formative experience. This is not this weekend. This is 18 years ago.
Hmm.
This person said, yeah, okay, so basically there's these tombs, right? And here's what happened. And then he just starts describing, like, used to be everyone was like a fucking hunter gatherer. And then at some point, someone figured out how to farm food. And when they farmed food, they suddenly, were able to like stockpile it. And when they were able to stockpile it, someone just decided they had control over all of it. And so they had to come up with like reasons for people to be afraid of them and to stop robbing them of the food. So they came up with like this beast, this mythical flying lizard bird called Quetzalcoatl, which is the legend. Very fucking figure, this mythological beast down there. Uh, yeah, it's a lightning fucking bird lizard thing. And if you steal the grain, Quetzalcoatl will kill you, right? So this person becomes a king for no reason, and they know it's bullshit. And then they continue to use Quetzalcoatl to make people afraid of stealing their property, and yada yada yada. A few generations later, their children become the next rulers. Their children become the next rulers. Next thing you know, nobody remembers that Quetzalcoatl's fake, and that's how you have the first, like feudal society, and that's where all of this culture comes from. So this indigenous person just flatly lays out a materialist history of like how religion and like a feudal system and stuff comes about to a
Hmm.
bunch of white people who think that they're about to be like, they think they're about to get like this
Like
spiritual mystic thing or whatever.
Quetzalcoatl created the grains and corn themselves.
Yeah, they think that's what they're about to be told, and
Yeah.
instead they just get like really flat, fucking glib materialism. This made me who I am. Like I was like, holy shit, this is so funny. Like everyone's like, what? No. And this person, who's a person who lives in Mexico, who has more class consciousness than the fucking tourists from the Imperial Corps, actually tells them how it is, and is able to lay things out better than the fucking a bunch of tourists can see. Right? It's very funny. This is what this is what's always interesting to me about like going and visiting these places, because you get this like noble savage thing flipped on its head. But anyways, that shit was cool, and we we came back to the city after that. We had dinner, and on the way home from dinner, we passed a fucking comedy club, dude. There's a comedy club
Uh,
in Mexico City, and it's like a little one, like like it reminded me of like the Velveeta Room in Austin, or like I don't know, like one of the alt like clubs. Not it's not Helium fucking Mexico City. It's not like part of a chain.
hmm.
Doesn't have this huge thing going on. It's the like locals are kind of running it and shit. And it's fucking English language. Like they do the
Oh.
only English language open mic in Mexico City or whatever. Probably in Mexico. I don't know. And the open mic was that night. We just happened to be walking up right as the list was like available. So
Oh.
we crashed it, right? It was fucking insane. So me and like I do stand up, sure, but like Jamie has a set now because I would made her do comedy because
Oh,
we were
really?
doing
Wow.
shows together.
Cool.
And it's pretty good. But then like our other friends, they were just like fuck it, like just like leftist weirdos we were with. Lena did a set. She went up and was insane and talked about Luigi and shit. Um, but like two of our other friends went up, and we crashed this mic, and it was so fucking funny, man. Because like we killed. I don't know, good at comedy. I fucking crushed. I think they didn't know that I was a comedian. They thought we were all like doing karaoke, you know. Um,
Is that did people do care? Oh, you mean like just trying to? Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
just doing stand up for fun. And man, it was really funny because the hosts were like, people in their 20s and 30s. Um, one of them like one of our friends kind of yelled something, but it was during like the part of the show where the host was doing crowd work, and
Hmm.
like someone we were with is just fucking did a like a he just responded and just did a fucking a comeback to something he said in the midst of a bunch of crowd work. So this host snapped at our friend and did a really bad, like not fucking good attempt at like a heckler bust and was like, "Why don't you shut the fuck up?" at
Ooh.
one of our friends, right? And so then we all hated the host, and we were the only audience that wasn't comedians. You know how that
Ah.
goes. And after the show, one of the hosts came up to me and he said, "You were surprisingly funny." And I was like, this is so funny because these people are fucking awkward and socially dumb and are making all these stupid, like weird, socially inept mistakes. And they're Mexicans. And it just shows you like stand up comedy is the same shit everywhere you fucking go. Like
Yeah.
somebody cornered me and started talking about like Tim Dillon and shit. And I was just like, this is fucking insane that like you can go to another part of the planet and start a comedy show and it will be the same fucking thing.
Did you reveal yourself as a
I fucking it's just the same as when it happens in America. I was started explaining who I was to these people, and it did not matter because they were just like swept up in this weird thing where they were like, "Have you heard this podcast and this one and this one and this one?" I'm like, "Yeah, I think they all suck," and they like didn't care because we
Yeah.
were just on the thing. They wanted to talk to someone about comedy, um, but it was
Huh.
like, it was yeah, it's the same everywhere you go. It's really
See,
funny.
but is kind of reassuring to hear that they were Mexicans because Mexico City increasingly sounds like an appealing place to move. Um, someone, a friend visited recently and sent me, or a couple years ago, sent me a picture of they serve kratom at bars there. Um, and see, but I've also heard that like there's this influx of Americans moving there, and they often don't speak Spanish and are contributing to gentrification. And people get annoyed mostly that they don't speak Spanish, and I would feel guilty about that. But knowing that there are just native Mexican open mic comedians, I guess makes me I would be right at home.
Well, there were gringos, and there were people who
Okay.
looked like you. Um,
Well, there are Mexican people who look like me, to be fair, but yeah,
that's true. There are also people who are Whitexicans who look like you and
yeah.
speak better Spanish than me and everyone and fucking whatever. But there were a lot of like what you're talking about. So Mexico City, it's like yeah, increasingly fucking gringos and people from the U.S. and stuff are gentrifying the fuck out of it. It's annoying. The point of this open mic though seemed to be to kind of like bridge an interesting gap. And some of the people who were on it, like they were talking about having lived in like New York or maybe were from there, but they've lived in Mexico City for like 10 years or something like that. It's kind of all over the place. It was an interesting melting pot. There was a really good comic from Venezuela who was doing like these jokes about, um, like she was doing jokes about like kind of like sex jokes, but also about class. Like she was talking about how like she just joke about like everybody. She was going through like statistics on what porn like every nationality watches and what like
Hmm.
political people watch. And she was like, "Yeah, in Mexico City, like everyone wants to fuck their maid," and she was talking about how it's like, "Yeah, but everyone's so class conscious here. That makes sense, that everyone's like." I can't remember her punchline, but it was pretty good. She's talking about how like conservatives all watch orgy like or they watch like gangbang porn. She's like, "Yeah, so it's like the thing they jerk off to is like communism, like." Redistributing the cum or whatever the fuck. I don't know. Shit like that. I don't want to do her material and butcher it. But I found it interesting because she was like part of this soup of like nomads that end up in a place like Mexico City. It's like New York, right? It's like people
Okay.
passing through, and she was she made a very astute point and also like illustrated that point in talking about this like consciousness of class that exists in Mexico, which what I was talking about earlier with that tour guide, I think it's something that like from the American perspective you should really look at is there's a like there's more of an everyday person's like consciousness of class society like almost you have in Europe or something that you don't get in the United States, and it was reflected in something as pedestrian as stand-up comedy. You know, comedy is about like it has to be about pedestrian stuff. You know, people you can do it about high-minded stuff, but the fact that like it made its way into like dick jokes and stuff like that, it reflected something really interesting about the culture to me. And yeah, you were also there were also like digital nomads was a thing, and people were doing jokes about that. So there are a lot of like people digital nomad is like when you you work online,
Oh,
and
okay.
so you just travel around and live in like co-living spaces and stuff like that, and just
Yeah.
do whatever. So like that's like a thing that made its way into the culture enough that someone would like comment on in a stand-up bit. It's like, ah, you run into these digital nomads, you know. Apparently, that's enough of a thing in something like
Hmm.
Mexico City where people see it's like, you know, the what the reason I'm talking about this as for our show, not just because it's like funny, we're comedians, is like applying a little bit of like, you know, amateur anthropology to stand-up. You know, you
Hmm.
notice things in it. Uh, it tells you something about that place. You know, and then, yeah, so then we went and did actual karaoke afterwards, and I did get cornered by a comedy person who wanted to tell me all about how they love Theo Vaughn or whatever, and it was like, and that person was like Mexican, but then they also were like, hey, I used to live in Texas, so I don't know what the fuck the deal was. You know, it's a soup of everyone's story is not 100% I'm from here or I'm
Right.
not. It
Sure.
reminded me of New York City like a lot, right? Because there's
Yeah.
also probably within being like Mexican, there's probably like, oh, you know, I've been in Mexico City my whole life. These fuckers, you know, came from some other part of Mexico or whatever, or or you know, oh, this person is rich enough to live in the bougie part of Mexico City. Fuck you, I'm from like the you know the real part or whatever. There's infinite grayscale of that, right?
No, yeah, I want to go. My now I'm really my only hang up is that I want to learn Spanish first, and that is for me is Herculean task because I'm very dumb.
So what I would recommend is just from having gone and done this is like learn as much as you can here, and then just you just have to throw yourself. You just have to jump in the pool at one point, and if you go with friends, this will be easier to like. You can rely on other people who can you can help each other communicate and stuff.
Yeah.
But you find yourself getting better at it as soon as you just are in a bunch of situations where you just have to speak it in order to like get through the airport or wherever the hell you're
Hmm.
at, or talk to a cab driver or whatever.
Yeah, that
Um,
makes sense. I'm like I mean, I took Spanish like like a lot of Americans in high school, and I learned I was really good at learning vocab, but I like stringing together the actual making it into actual vocabulary and sentences just always escaped me. I could never string a sentence together, but I'll remember like uh, sacapuntas. Do you know what that means?
um, you've told me this before.
Oh,
What
have
the
I
fuck?
said that right? Pencil sharpener.
Yeah, yeah.
It's my favorite word in Spanish and
Very,
Espanol.
very good, Mr. Lee. Or Senor Anders. So, anyways, let me get to my point here, right? Saw some incredible shit while I was there, right? I went to the church. I went to like a church of Santa Muerte. You know about this shit?
No, I don't think
Okay,
so.
so there's a fucking religion there that is, you know, I mean, it's real, but it's also like, how do I explain this? It's like syncretism. It's almost like voodoo or something like that. So syncretism is like this concept when, especially when the Catholic Church would colonize a place, um, you know, they would try to push the Catholicism for historical reasons, right? Like we understand now, obviously, social control, right? But it's also a thing that kind of functions organically. The people pushing it probably really believe in it to some extent, um, and but they're trying to push it on their colonized subjects, and the colonized subjects already have like their own religion. So in Haiti, this is how you get voodoo, where you have these like saint like figures that look like saints from like the Catholic Church, but they're mixed with the indigenous like voodoo, like the mystical fucking insane shit that is voodoo. Um, and it, it gives you these like crazy folklorish outcomes. In Mexico, the Lady Guadalupe is a really good example of this. Um, that like painting you always see of like it looks like the Virgin Mary kind of, and she's like kind of surrounded by like interesting. She's drawn in like just particularly Mexican way and has like the little like cherub angel flying below her. People always think it's the Virgin Mary. It's not.
Hmm.
It's from the Catholic Church pushing, trying to get the natives and I think it's Aztecs in this area to accept uh, like these saints. And so basically, what happens is they figure out there's a saint that's just a random obscure saint in Catholic religion that kind of resembles one of the indigenous like figures who's like a mythological
Hmm.
thing. The indigenous person is named Serpent Skirt. I talked about this a long time on the show. I'm sorry if I'm repeating.
Serpent skirt.
It's so cool. Her name is Serpent
Okay.
Skirt. It's
I gotta
that
get one of those.
in Waddle or whatever the fuck the language is. Um, but like she's a human sacrifice god and has like a decapitated head and snakes coming out of the head decapitation and they're alive and her arms are chopped off but out of her armholes snakes and she's wearing a skirt made out of snakes and she's like this crazy fucking hardcore snake god thing and they just figured out her story. It's kind of similar to this random saint, and so this all culminates in like a myth where they say, "Oh my God, like a painting of Serpent Skirt disappeared, and then it reappeared as this Lady Guadalupe." It means like God intervened and it's a miracle or something, and it's all just like it's like a really interesting explanation for how to like paint over everything and mash the two together. That way, everyone's happy. Like, okay, you're technically Catholics now, but we sort of incorporated your stuff, and you just see this interesting mashup stuff happen all over the place. And Santa Muerte is kind of like that, right? Santa Muerte is the saint of death, and it looks like the Lady Guadalupe or like a Catholic saint, but it's fucking skull for a face. It's insane. It's like a hardcore like Catholic, I think would probably look at this and go, "Oh, what the fuck? This is sacrilegious or whatever." But it's some outcome of syncretism that happened, and it's formed itself into a religion where people worship this god of death or this saint of death, and there's like a little back alley church you can go to where there are these statues of this like grim reaper like figure covered in these different robes, and the different robes mean different things. So you buy little anointed figures of Santa Muerte. If you buy one that has the red robe, it's supposed to do something for like your romantic life, right? There's one where its robes are made out of dollar bills, but check this out.
Oh.
American dollar bills, right?
Oh.
Not pesos for some reason, right? And it's supposed to do things for your business ventures and stuff like that. But like, why is it the colonizer money, right? It's very interesting. So, and there's just like all these fucking incredible like paintings and statues and stuff all over the place. There's this big fucking what do you call it? Like you can pray at this big altar where there are these like light up things happening, all these ornate fucking like death gods and stuff all over the place. It looks like a Catholic church that got turned off into some weird Grateful Deady, Dark Soulsy, like kind of spooky, evil, not evil, but like it's odd. So we went to the Santa Muerte Church, and to be honest with you, I kind of felt like a number of different ways about this because part of me is like kind of glib and is like a comic, and I'm like, this is weird and insane, right? Um, but there were people in there really praying to Santa Muerte, and they weren't like tourists having a laugh, right? It was pretty clear that they were like, someone died, and they're
Damn.
talking to the saint of death about it. And I don't want to be like disrespectful, and this is where I'm like, ugh. On one hand, I feel like I'm disrespecting this church by being in here. On the other hand, I feel a little out of place with my fucking ironic podcaster friends because I don't know if it's the older I get or what the fuck is going on with me, but I'm kind of down with this shit. And I've been thinking a lot about how, like, David Lynch talked about how he did transcendental meditation every day, and his like artistic process was, uh, you know, it was very like subconscious. Like he was like a shaman. Like he would just pull things from his dreams and stuff like that. And for me, when I was younger, I was like a Reddit atheist type guy. Like it's all fake. They're using it to control you, right? But the more, especially that I like really dug into like trying to understand the world and pursuing, still having art in my life as an adult, I've kind of come back around and realized that like religions and art are like two sides of the same coin, and something like this exists because images are like really powerful, and they just exist as like ways for our brains to like organize deeper thoughts that we have and stuff like that. And like whatever, I could go off on this and be its own podcast and try to get Duncan Trussell to come on the fucking show or some shit, right? But legit, I was thinking about death a lot. I was thinking about our friend Raghav Mehta we started this fucking show with, whose death anniversary happened recently, still weighing on my mind. I'm sitting here, I'm like gonna take some time with Santa Muerte and like see if I can use this image to just like, to meditate on and to like to I don't know, just to go deep inside of myself and see if it aids me in any way in making sense of all these thoughts. And I had this fucking moment, and then a little cat came up to me. I was like, okay, it's time to maybe get out of here. But then I noticed that there's a sign on the wall, and it said that you can get limpios or consultarias or some shit. So my friend Debbie, who is like into spiritual occult shit, she knew what Olympio was. It's a cleansing, right? So she got Olympio, and they fucking crushed up a bunch of flowers and rubbed them all over her, and gave her this really nice reading. And she got, like a kind of a fucking a reading, a fortune, some advice, right? Something to ruminate on. I was like, wow, that's really cool. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. Everything's super cheap here. It's only 300 pesos, right? That's like $15. I'll get a consultation. So I got it. I got a consultation. I didn't realize the subtle difference here. The sign says, I thought it was the same thing. So I was like, I'll have that. And they go, consult to whatever the fuck. I'm like, sure. And so this woman took me and she's like, okay, come with me. And we go up this spiral staircase into another part of the church. And I was like, wait, where are we going? So we go into this room, and there's this like tile thing on the floor in this room. And she starts breaking up this like powder and making like a sigil on the ground on the tile with this black powder and with this white powder. And I don't know what either of them are. She's like, stand right here, stand in front of it. And she lit it on fire. We're inside of like a building in a shanty town, mind you. And this huge fire starts and it's burning. And she's like, no, stand over it and like feel it, like on your skin and stuff. And like it really feels like you're fucking, it's like you're in contact with something or whatever. It's like a ritual, right? Whatever, sure. Part of me is like laughing. So I'm like, this is insane. Part of me is like, no, don't be a fucking glib tourist. Get into it, right? So then it's real weird because she drew this sigil out on the floor and it has all these different symbols. One of the symbols burns for like a minute and a half longer than everything else after it fucking burns up. I'm looking at it, I'm like, how the fuck did she do that? Like, is it a trick? What the fuck? Um, I barely kind of understand what's happening because it's in Spanish. And then she took this big bottle of like some sort of liquor or like anointed water or something. I couldn't really see what was on the label. She takes a big swig of it and she just spit it in my face. And she like walked around me a few times and spit it on me a few other times. And I'm like, what the fuck, dude? Like this is the ritual clearly. And then she sat down and we talked, and she told me some things, and I'm gonna keep them to myself because I'm still trying to figure out what the fuck they meant. But
Okay.
it was cool. It was cool. Um, and it was really heavy, and it was just in this random alley in El Centro, right? So El Centro is the historic center of Mexico, and it's where,
I do know what that means. The center, right?
yeah, yeah,
L
and
is
it's where,
the.
um, I'll give you. How about this one? Do you know what El Palacio Nacional means?
I'm gonna say um nap national natural palace.
It's the National Palace. You're very close.
Damn.
I'm not sure. Fucking. I'm still so stupid about all this stuff. I like didn't. There's no time to like learn basic shit, but I think that might be where Scheinbaum and the government is. It might not be. It might just be like historic because in downtown, or in the Centro, like it's insane. It's so jarring looking from like a colonial perspective. The ruins that were Mexico City, like the temples and stuff there, are still like sticking up out of the ground in like certain parts of the Centro. And they do like tours and stuff, and they tell you like, yeah, this is like half of like the temple that used to that existed before they built everything on before the Spanish built this cathedral on top of it.
Hmm.
And they did like human sacrifices and shit at these temples. They talk a lot about what actually that was, how much of it got spun into being like, oh, they're fucking crazy. Some of it was like they were just doing surgery, like, and then the Spanish, oh, they're savages. Some of it actually was human sacrifices. I don't know, right? But there's this insane, like, incredible cathedral on top of this shit, and apparently it's fucking sinking because they built a cathedral on top of what was already a temple and like didn't have the foresight to think that's like not a good foundation.
No
So
way. Oh.
there's a Spanish cathedral. There are cathedrals everywhere for those with the eyes to see. By the way, one of them is in the Centro. Um, and so you see that, and you see like all of this stuff, like all these people on the street. I think it was Benito Juarez's birthday when I went down there, so it was like a national holiday. So there were people in the street playing music and shit. I saw a play. There's not enough time for me to explain everything I saw because it was so just sensory overload was like too much. I was walking around. There's like these street markets. Everyone is selling, bootleg clothes and stuff. Like you'll just see like a fucking booth with like a bunch of like heavy metal shirts, and then for some reason, impossible to discern through like cultural translation, a bunch of Malcolm in the Middle merchandise like in between.
What's
There
that?
were,
And Malcolm El Centro?
yeah, Malcolm was uh a bunch of the shirts that were Malcolm in the Middle were like Dewey, the thick little
Hey, people from around the world love Dewey.
I
I
know.
dated someone from Italy who just I love Dewey. She just for some reason he has. I mean, I think it's because it's nonverbal. He doesn't say anything, so he has like country to country, non-Anglo places like him.
That makes sense. Yeah, no, he's taking the world by storm. They like him more than Malcolm. Um, there were like, those like custom socks you can get at like the mall at like fucking Spencer's Gifts or whatever, where it's like cool socks that have like Gremlins on
Yeah.
them or some kitschy thing like that. So there are a bunch of socks for sale that have AMLO and Claudia Scheinbaum on them.
Oh, nice.
Like,
Did you get
I
any?
mean, no, I mean, I don't want there. I got some weird stuff. I got some cool stuff. I skipped those. Um, the Morena party, pretty cool. It seems like, but there's a lot to discuss there.
Yeah.
There is. How do I explain this? Even if the president is cool, I do not want to wear the president on my socks.
Okay. I mean, you're
Uh,
putting him on beneath you, so on your foot. So that in a way, it might be disrespectful.
I don't know if I want to do that either because he's kind of in the middle for me. So the Morena party, right? Let's talk about this. This is actually a good spot to stop here and talk about the Morena party. Um, you know, something I really was thinking about when I was down there was like how we tend to reduce things as outsiders to another country, anytime we discuss like what's going on there. Thinking about this a lot with like these discussions around like other states on the internet with like Western leftists who are, you know, social democrats or Marxist Leninists or whatever self-identified. We tend to like cast like Russia or China or Cuba or whatever as these monolithic things. And then if you talk to somebody who's actually from like Cuba, for example, I have a lot of friends from Cuba. Uh, you know, a lot of them don't. A lot of them, people who are leftists from Cuba, like see things the same way as us to a certain extent, but they don't have this like cartoonish like worship of Fidel and Che the same way we do as Americans. We're like, what a fucking badass, right?
Yeah.
And have their own criticisms of the government as leftists. Whereas in America, every argument is boiled down to you're arguing with a right wing person. So you're like, fuck you, Cuba is good. And, what you're saying about it, you're not factoring in the embargoes and stuff. And they're like, fuck you, it's a communist 1984 nightmare. And it's just very reductive, right? So, Marina Party, like, I'm thinking about this. I'm like, yeah, there's shades of gray here that we need to like really understand if we want to be like leftists. Because you might be like a leftist who comes from America and you're like, I love Claudia Scheinbaum, and then not realize that's like as if you came to America and you were like, I love Obama, and we're like, it's more complicated than that, right? Um, or maybe
I'm
or
pretty confident that she's better than Obama, though.
I'm not. But that's
Yeah.
not what I'm saying. I'm not saying
Okay.
she's like. I'm not saying she's the same as Obama. I'm
Yeah.
just saying if you were in that political moment in America and you were a leftist, you might be a leftist back then who thought Obama was going to be more than he was, or something like that. The Marietta Party's good. It's more like if Bernie had won or something like that.
Yeah.
But I'm down there to talk about this fucking anarchist, right? I'm down there to talk about Ricardo Flores Magón, and so I'm reading a lot about like the anarchist left in Mexico, like the legacy of like the EZLN, Zapatistas, all that shit, right? And I think that there is a left, especially the anarchist left in Mexico, that sees the Morena Party as like the compromise. It's like this, they got this social democratic like government outcome,
Sure.
and they're like, hey, don't maybe celebrate entirely. These people are not only like not the full thing. Everyone's waiting with bated breath to see like what the fuck they get done. But also like, so Ricardo Flores Magón, right? The precursor to the revolution. He's a figure who's like on the outskirts of the cultural imagination around the Mexican Revolution. Everyone knows Pancho Villa. Everyone knows Emiliano Zapata, right? So one of the things that the Morena Party did over the like last few years is every year they honor a specific figure, and they just do this like branding thing. Where like this is the year of Zapata, this is the year of Frida Kahlo, whatever. 2022 was the year of Ricardo Flores Magón, and there were like political sort of like protests and stuff about it because the way the actual anarchist left sees this is an instance of recuperation, right? It's like when our politicians honor Martin Luther King, even though they do not have the politics of Martin Luther King, right?
Hmm.
And like when AMLO took office, he said this thing about Ricardo Flores Magón, where he was like, he's an anarchist, but we like him anyway, right? like, so it's almost like this image of this tradition got subsumed a little bit and maybe used to mollify everything, right? And I don't know. I think it's kind of interesting. So I was walking around. I went to like different. I went to like these like sort of punk like flea market sort of things where like a lot of people would make their own T-shirts and stuff. I got this really good T-shirt I'm wearing right now. It's the most like me branded coded thing.
Oh,
It jumped
nice.
out at me. It's a rat who's reading a book that says Chinga la Migra, and he's crushing an ice truck with his foot. like I
Wow.
saw that, I was like, "What the fuck? Like, how did you know I was coming?" All of my shirts look
Yeah.
like this, right?
And is that? Do you think they that they have also ice means the same thing
Yeah,
as
like
the ice
this
you
is
want to
like,
crush? Yeah.
yeah, this is
Nice.
deliberately. There was like a lot of stuff like this, and it was in these markets where people are just selling stuff or whatever. There's lots of just like generic like metal and rock and roll shit. But there were these like kind of punk artists, and I was thinking about this a lot because like punk rock like is different depending on where you are. In Mexico City, it seemed more deliberately like a political. Like there were expressly like ideologically anarchistic things going on in these little punk like markets. There was a T-shirt in the same booth as this one. It was just a T-shirt that just had Bakunin on it. It just said Bakunin,
Oh,
like
cool.
he's a band. There was one of Emma Goldman. I didn't get either of these because they weren't that good of shirts, and I don't know if I want to walk around with a Bakunin shirt because of whatever. But like, um, but I was thinking about this a lot because like punk music. When I read that book about the '70s, the author talks about this. How like the punk in America is uniquely apolitical. In the UK, where it largely originated out, there's a debate about who fucking did it first or whatever. But you got like the Clash and the Crass and stuff like that, and it reflected, having a political left. You had a deliberate lyrics and messages and stuff about society. In America, we got the Ramones. The thing a lot of people don't understand about the Ramones is that Johnny Ramone was a Republican. Still is. I think
Mm.
he's still alive. The fucking flagship American punk band was led by a Republican, and other than that, was largely apolitical until Joey Ramone later in life sort of became a liberal, and that's about it, right? But Cowie, the guy who wrote that book, he has an interesting rumination on this where he talks about how like the 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 reason that kind of happens is because like in America you had the removal of unions and stuff like that, and like the ability to articulate the anxiety that the working class has as a political project. So instead you just get that anxiety unarticulated. And so you see that in movies like Taxi Driver and like in our culture of like mass shootings and stuff like that. The anxiety's there, the articulation is gone, there's nowhere to put the energy, so you just get this like anger. And the Ramones, that anxiety is just like it really resonated with people because it's felt among a young generation of like guys who just want to be like teenage boys, and they just want to sniff glue and shit and be like dumbasses, right? And uh and then if because it's not articulated, it's like kind of reactionary, right? It's led by a Republican. People don't even understand that. It's just libidinal. I think about this a lot. I think you see this a lot in American like leftists and their insistence that art has nothing to do with politics, and like, oh, I can be an edge lord and also vote for Bernie and stuff like that. Right? But when you go somewhere else, the music and the art is more consistent. It's together. So the punks down there were straight up anarchists. I came upon an artist. I found this fucking cool illustration he made. I bought it. It was of Ricardo Flores Magone with like Liberty spikes, like a punk, but it's him. You can see his pince nez and shit, and he's got a neck tattoo that says Libertad, and it's fucking tight. Um, and it says like 200 years of death of the Constitution or whatever. Um, and so, anyways, I'm getting to the point now. I'm wrapping up my section here, but like, what happened is I got to the fucking Casa del Hijo de Aguizote eventually. Now, the reason Ricardo Flores Magon is associated with this thing called Hijo de Aguizote is because the Hijo de Aguizote was a satirical publication under the reign of Porfirio Diaz. There were two, they were friends. One was Regeneracion, which was Ricardo Flores Magon's newspaper. The other one was Hijo de Aguizote. They were the only two publications that were critical of Porfirio Diaz under his dictatorship, the Porfiriato, right? And so they worked together. But Regeneracion was a newspaper, and it was more of an outlet for like his political party initially, the Partido Liberal Mexicano, that was like kind of liberal at the time, having its own meaning. And then he sort of evolved and became more anarchistic, sort of turned into the Magonista thing. This is why I'm getting to this point. This is like the more I like learn about this, the more I'm like, this is like destiny for us. This is so interesting what happened. El hijo de Ahuizote. What that means is the son of Ahuizote. Ahuizote is like a Mexican, like a Spanish language sort of adaptation of the word Ahuizotl. If you ever heard of like axolotl, the suffix otl means like creature. So Ahuizotl was a dog, but it was a mythical dog in like the mythology of the indigenous people there at the time. I can't remember if it was Mexican or Aztec, or Nahua, or the fuck. But an Ahuizote was like, it's like a magical like beast. It's a mythical beast. It's like a mermaid dog, like a fish dog, water dog is kind of what it translates to. So having a newspaper that's satirical and it's called The Son of the Fish Dog, it's a fucking joke, dude. It's like saying it's you're a son of a bitch, but instead of saying like a regular dog, like a like a mythical dog, right? That's the joke. It's hard to translate here, but you get it, right? It's like the fucking Onion, like calling your newspaper like a random thing as a joke that sounds like it's a normal newspaper, but then it's like there's a wink to it. So they ran this satirical thing, and it's the building is still there in El Centro, I guess, or maybe they moved it. I don't get into that, but I got to it. And I was like, wow, my god! I had to walk through all this shit to get to it because one of the trains was down. I passed through all this stuff. I'm alone, right, in this fucking country, and I get to it, and I'm like, I go inside, and there's a guy just sitting at a card table. And I start talking to him in my broken Spanish. I'm like, yo, mi gran abuelo, you know. And he's like, okay. And I start to look around, and there's like not much going on in this place. And I'm like, in the book, it said this was a museum. So I'm like, es el museo magonista? And he's like, oh, no, 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 no. And he starts to tell me, like, it's a new building. Like, we moved. And I can't really tell if the old building used to be the museum, because the idea here, by the way, if I can explain this correctly, is in the book they sort of talk about how like Magon, when he printed all this fucking critical shit of Porfirio Diaz, he he was Diaz caught onto it. He busted him up. He broke his printing press, and the odd thing is that Porfirio Diaz kept a lot of Magon's writings for some reason. I don't know, to understand it, to control it, whatever, maybe just egotism. He kept a lot of this shit because um I don't know, right? So after they overthrew Diaz, this stuff is it's almost like it got declassified, like the JFK stuff or whatever. After a while, there's a wealth of like Magonist literature, and this museum was supposed to be like a fucking like a vault of that information, right? That's why I went to go study it. But Magon is like an anarchist, you know? Like, how do I explain this? What I'm about to tell you. The legacy of this stuff is anarchists. So I'm like, where's the museum? And they're like, oh yeah, that's like not. It's in like the old building. Like we don't really. This is like. He starts explaining to me. This is a community center. And I'm like, what? Like, okay, cool. It's an anarchist center. That makes sense to me. You know, we're doing like skill swap here. We're like organizing, and it's straight up. It's they're just teaching kids like skills. Like there's classes to learn Nawa and stuff, but there's also like a big screen printing room, and like there's like anime and shit all over the walls in the screen printing room. And the Magone stuff really isn't there. It's only there in spirit because it's just a fucking community center where people can learn things for free. And it reminded me a lot of going to Woodbine Space in New York and how there are people from the neighborhood that are like, oh, this is a free thing I can bring my kids to like learn stuff, and they have no idea that the undercurrent of it is ideological. So I was walking around, I was like, wow, there's kind of a dead end here. Like I went all this way, and it's like kind of a like nothing. And then I looked at what they were organizing, and on the wall there's this big thing that's like, hey, come by, such and such hour because we're putting together a flash mob.
What
that's
was the
that's
flash mob?
I don't know. It
Okay.
was hours from then. I didn't have the time to be there. I don't even know if it was that day, but
Was it going to
like,
be at Trotsky's house?
right? I don't fucking know. Like they're doing improv everywhere at this fucking ancestral like site that I want to go to, uh, and so I hit a dead end, man, and that's kind of where this stops. So I'm gonna get back to researching and just do some proper podcasting about it when we get a chance. But but I'm still kind of trying to uncover stuff about Magone and the Magonistas. I did eventually make it to like some museums, some proper museums. I saw some really cool shit. He was on the wall in like the bicentennial exhibit in the tower. There's like a skyscraper down there for a minute. Most of it focused on Madero, but there's a little bit about him. And there was also this really cool like glass case full of shit the from like Porfirio Diaz's like shit that I guess they just have now. Um, like all of his like weird top hats and like fucking capitalist turn of the century weird garb and stuff. And he had a chessboard that was a Cinco de Mayo chessboard. So like Cinco de Mayo is what it actually is. People think it's Mexican Independence Day, but what it actually is during the Civil War in America. So the America had the Monroe Doctrine that oddly were operated as a shield to keep Europe from colonizing Latin America because it was for America to colonize, right?
Hmm.
And sort of like depending on who's talking about it, operates as this isolationist thing for virtuous reasons or for whatever, right? Um, the Monroe Doctrine is temporarily unenforceable because America broke out into civil war. Around the same time, there's this period of instability in Mexico because post having a fucking um, emperor installed, and then having like a series of unstable liberal governments, the Napoleon III came about in France. You ever heard the Marx phrase, history, what is it?
Sack of
Fucking,
potatoes?
no, not sack of
Oh.
potatoes. History repeats itself first as tragedy, then as
Tragedy than
farce.
his farce. Yeah.
The farce, he's talking about Napoleon. The first time Napoleon happened, it's tragedy. The second time, it's farce. It's like
Hmm.
hilarious. Napoleon III, his descendant, who tried to become a new Napoleon, did all this ridiculous shit, tried to do imperialism in a certain way, didn't land it the way the original Napoleon did. One of the things he tried to do was invade Mexico. And when he invaded Mexico, he was beat back in this really legendary battle by a guy named Porfirio Diaz, who at the time everyone was like, holy shit, this guy kicks ass, right? Like, that's why we celebrate Cinco de Mayo. So Porfirio Diaz's claim to fame is Cinco de Mayo and beating back the fucking French and saving Mexico from empire. Only tragically to go on to become president and then to just never give up his reign and become a dictator and sell the entire like country off to American capitalist interests. It's really interesting. So because that's his claim to fame, he had a chessboard that was a Cinco de Mayo like chessboard where one side was the Mexican army and one side was the French army, and he would play
Ah.
chess. The bishops had like the flags and stuff. Fucking cool. Really insane shit. But anyways, yada yada yada. I got sick a little bit. I saw a luchador match. A bunch of other crazy shit happened. I went to a fucked up bar. I'll tell you all about it some other time. I'm hogging the show. But I'm back, and yeah, if you're interested in that sort of stuff, the episodes are coming. I'm gonna put them together. Tell me about abundance. What the fuck is this?
It's a book. I've read some reviews. that I took some notes on. However, it is 1 a.m. my time, and I'm pretty wiped. So I think maybe we'll save this for. I mean, I basically said the whole thing up top, which is that it's just kind of a rehash of I don't deregulation, neoliberalism, and they're trying to rebrand it. And I don't think it's really going to be a very meaningful contribution to political discourse when we look back on this phase of history. Maybe I'll be wrong, but there's not a lot that's new there. But yeah, we'll have to talk about that some other time. There's some fun stuff in there.
Okay, well, okay, as long as it's okay. I sorry, I made this episode about Mexico. As long as just doing Mexico, then, and we're not gonna get into the other stuff we had planned. 'Cause we had a lot of content for the show, right? It's a good
Yeah.
problem to have. Let me
Hmm.
tell you about a couple other things that happened because this is pretty funny. So, I went to I I, I kind of got that out of the way because I wanted to like I just had to know what was going on with the important stuff I came down there for, and then I had a couple nights off. And here's another thing that happened to me in Mexico City. I try to research the bar custom, like the customs for like tipping and stuff like that, and how to get around and whether you should haggle and stuff like that when I travel because I think it's gauche not to, and I've had to deal with it so much in the service industry in America. So I tried to get a handle on what was going on, and it's really interesting because tipping culture is American. So, like for the most part, you don't have to tip. You, when you buy a taco on the street, I tried to tip a guy, and he goes, "No, get a beer with it." Is what he fucking told me. I was like, "Fuck, cool, yeah." There are fancy bougie restaurants, especially in Condesa, which is where we stayed, which is like the Williamsburg of Brooklyn or of CMX.
The Williamsburg of Brooklyn. Bushwick.
Williamsburg, Brooklyn.
They're calling Bushwick the Williamsburg of Brooklyn.
There's a Bushwick down there too. I didn't really get a chance to fuck around there much, but
It's called that?
it's no, but there's a Bushwick
Yeah,
everywhere
I'm
you
kidding. Yeah.
go. um, so I'm not really sure like how late the bars are open and stuff. And I just had a night where I was like, hey, I can party really late tonight. I don't have to get up early. But everybody else that was hanging out, one by one, they all fell. Everyone was like, oh yeah, we're gonna go crazy after the Luchador show. Which by the way was fucking insane. I saw live Luchador wrestling. It was the coolest thing I've ever seen. Um, but like every so all these people I was with, they were like, "We're gonna rage all night. We're gonna go to this fucking goth club that stays open till 5 in the morning," which we eventually went to. Um, but like that night, everyone kind of fell asleep on me. It's like, "Fuck this! I'm gonna go walk around." And I went to this bar, and they told me like, "Oh, no, we're not serving." It was 1 in the morning. I was like, "Fucking last call's 2 here. You're bullshitting. How the fuck does this work here, right?" So I looked up some shit, and I found another bar around the corner. It's called Tom's. And I was like, fuck yeah, Tom's is open till 4 a.m. I'm going to Tom's, right? Here's what Tom's was. This kind of relates back to a couple episodes ago, something we did. Tom's was called Tom's Leather Bar, it turns out. It's open until 4 a.m. It was the scariest, like, leather oriented gay bar I've ever been in my fucking life. I think it is a reference to this thing called Tom of Finland, which you've ever seen like people that wear shirts that have like hardcore leather daddy illustrations on them and shit. That's from this like this subcultural weird thing called Tom of Finland. He's an illustrator who was involved in like the leather scene, the gay leather scene or whatever for years. And
I
he's become
I
kind of a
just
hipster.
assumed I just assumed it was like a show on Max, Tom of Finland.
No, you are not. Dewey is not going to be on Tom of Finland TV show. No one under 30 should watch Tom of Finland.
What
Um,
happened to Dewey? What is that guy doing now?
I
I'm gonna
don't
look him
know.
up.
Right? He's going to be like an adult now.
Yeah.
He's probably drowning in pussy in Argentina or something right now. What I went to Tom's because I was drinking and I was like, yeah, I want to drink, and this is the only bar in the neighborhood open. So Tom of Finland is controversial because it's a lot of the leather guy like imagery overlaps with some Nazi shit, And this bar, there were like iron eagles all over the walls,
Oh no.
and there were TV screens all over the walls blasting hardcore gay porn. Just
Okay. So the good kind of Iron Eagle.
uh,
I'm
I
just assuming that's good iconography. I don't in the there's a dual meaning to it, but maybe not.
well, it's kind of like Rammstein, where it's like, well, are they like inverting it and making it now something else, or but
Yeah.
also is there still some original meaning here? I don't know. Let's get Zizek to break down Tom of Finland and figure out if it's sublimating or whatever the fuck it's doing. But I bought a fucking ticket, and the ticket is good for, or I got cover. The cover is good for multiple drink tickets. So you have to sit there and drink through like 2 drinks. And I went in, and I'm just like, I'm not supposed to be in here. Like, there's a guy jacked, dancing, there's no subtlety in this world of the gay scene. Like, it's not like a fun, Bushwick like alt club that it's a gay bar, but like it's not happy fun hideaway. It's not everyone's welcome. Dude has just got a huge cock and he's just jerking it like on a stage. All these in, intense dudes are like, yeah,
Nice.
And I sat there and I just pounded 2 beers because I was like, I want to get drunk. This is the only place to do it. If I might make eye contact with anyone, it's over. Because they're going to be like, either you're not supposed to be in here or you are supposed to be in here. And I've been in this exact situation before. And I felt like, to throw back to the Santa Muerte place, I'm like, I'm an outsider and I'm being an asshole. Um, but also, yeah, you might not think I'm an outsider. And I just slammed 2 beers and I left, but it was very funny. So if you're into that sort of thing, hey, here's my recommendation for the week: Mexico City, Tom's Leather Bar.
Okay.
Okay,
I'm looking up Eric Per Sullivan's Instagram, and there's some speculation as to whether or not it's real. He's not been in a movie since 2010. That's the guy who played Dewey.
oh, he's just out there living life. Good for him.
Yeah.
okay. Cool. Well, thanks for listening to Yammer about Mexico City. My going podcasts incoming. I think Why You Mad's back. I'm not sure. I don't know if I have any other plugs. I'm back in LA.
I got a plug I alluded to last week. It is now official, announced, posted about. You can buy tickets to April 4th, the roast of Andrew Cuomo, which is happening at Silo in Bushwick, the Mexico City of Brooklyn. Um, it's gonna be a really great show. It's hosted by me and Freddie G, and we have a stacked fucking lineup. A lot of funny people. And we have some rousing speeches. So we got great comics: Jaffer Khan, uh, J.P. McDade, Noye Brown West, other people. But we also have Jamal Bowman giving a speech. He's probably going to do some jokes. And then also Lindsey Boylan, who was as a political figure here in New York, who at one point worked for Andrew Cuomo and was the first person to publicly basically say that he sexually harassed her. So she's a lot of guts and is going to be helping us roast his
Wow.
ass. And the money is going to Dream, which is the Don't Rank Eric or Andrew for mayor campaign, just to stop both of them from becoming the fucking mayor.
Dream. That's very clever. Wow. Okay. Well, I'm excited to hear about this hot Jamal Bowman set. I heard it's
Yeah.
filthy.
I mean, hey, you never know. He's free now. He's not in Congress anymore. He's a podcaster now too. So he is free to go in and just use bad words and stuff. So come on out to that. We'll put a ticket link in the comments. And not in the comments, the show description.
In the show notes. It's very late. Andrew's brain isn't working. We gotta get the fuck up there. All right. Thank you for listening, everyone. We'll be back. Bonus episode and then another episode. You know how the show works. Oh, if you don't know how the show works, hey, sign up for our fucking Patreon. It's how we make the show. It's how we bring it to you without ads for better help and bullshit like that. And dog food and security is a thing a guy tried to get me to fucking interview him about for advertising reasons recently. A guy asked me if we on Pod Damn America wanted to interview him about security at the Super Bowl, which I almost catfished him into because I thought it would have been funny because he's got like an insane
What
amount of cop.
is this?
Yeah,
Does he work for Ashton Fine or whatever that guy's name is? The influencer, one
I
of
don't
his
know.
security guards.
It's like a private security company since we're like delving into that world increasingly. Um, you know what? Maybe we'll try to get him on.
Yeah, let's get him on the show.
Maybe
Him
we could
and
get him to talk about the guy who ran around with the fucking Palestinian Sudanese flag, and he'll be like, "I ascertained that he had entered the premises at 0600 hours, but he had managed to escape my grasp," or something. I don't know. That's my how I imagine it would go down. Moa Mayer brought that guy on stage recently. I saw it on Instagram. Very cool.
oh,
The
nice.
Palestinian comic who is from my neighborhood in Texas, and I really want to talk to him on the show. If anyone knows Moa Mayer, poke him. Tell him to come on Pod Damn America. I haven't talked to him in years. I've met him. I know him from comedy, but he's famous now, and that happens.
Hmm.
Anyways, sign up for the Patreon. We do bonus episodes every week, extra content, stuff like that, video, whatever. We're also on YouTube if you're a YouTube person, and it's how we make the show without ads. And there's a Discord. Okay, that's my pitch of the episode for the pod for the fucking Patreon.
Right.
Are we finito or whatever the fuck? I guess
Es
that's how it goes.
finito. Is that not Spanish? Final. What do they say in Spanish for it's finished?
They say get the fucking.
Ya basta. That's enough.
They say,
I think
senor,
I'm gonna say ya basta.
senor, tus pantalones son cerveza. I don't know. Fuck it. It's done. I'm tired. End recording.
Ya basta.
Oh, whoops. How do I end this fucking thing?